But we talk about things like black power and pro-blackness and African-centeredness as if these are alien beings or something. We speak about these concepts like they're caricatures. For every other people, these same concepts and their respective manifestations are normal. Being Eurocentric, speaking a European language, practicing a European governmental system, that's all normal for Europeans. Being Chinese and speaking Cantonese or Mandarin, practicing Taoism, it's normal for Chinese folks. Controlling their own neighborhoods and everything that goes on in it is normal for these folks. You know what's abnormal for them? When the British, for instance, tried to run a drug trade on them back in the day. I'm sure some of y'all have heard of the Opium Wars. White folks had Chinese folks strung out on drugs. Then they got fed up and kicked all the white folks, usually Christian missionaries, out of the country and cleaned up their stuff. For some reason, when they did that, the mysterious supply of drugs coming into China dried up. Y'all figure that one out. Who knows? But, Chinese folks got back to practicing their own culture, and white folk been mad ever since. But all they can do is make sure that whenever they mention China in the media, they say Communist China, because communism is bad. Nevertheless, that's what's abnormal to them. Having some foreign people come into their country, flooding the population with drugs, was abnormal to them. Having a foreign people come in, converting them to another religion and culture, was abnormal to them. Having a foreign people gaining control of aspects of their lives that were formerly under their control is what is abnormal to them. But to us, all that stuff is normal. Tell you the truth, if China were to rise up right now, for instance, and go to war with America or whatever and take over, most likely we'd be the most receptive. And in, no time, maybe one generation, we'd be walking around here dressing up like Chinese folks, speaking some Chinese language, and acting like this is normal behavior for us. That's the reality of the situation for us right now in America. We fully accepted most of this abnormal situation. It's just that some of it that we haven't fully embraced yet is still a little embarrassing to us because white folk harp on it in the media. Crime. We're way more negligent in the area of how little control and power we actually have when it comes to being an independent people. But white people don't promote in the media how much they control our lives and have transformed us from producers into primarily consumers. Why would they promote it? It wouldn't be to their benefit to have black people actually concerned about that. Not to mention how bad it looks on them, even though they try to act as though their position is one of performing a valuable public service for us. Another side note, they also promote our underbelly heavily in media to undermine our moral authority over our own affairs. But again, that's another conversation. So, aren't they scared that if they highlight criminality, that we'll get concerned with that and clean up our act? Hell no, they ain't scared of that. Everything else that I mentioned before contradicts it efficiently. What are the results anytime someone in an authoritative position highlights the bad behavior, for instance, of a child, but is guilty themselves of bad behavior, but they use their position to justify their indulgence in it? Does the child straighten up? Hell no. 9 times out of 10, the child sees the contradiction and makes the immature decision to continue doing the immature thing because that is the natural result of all of those conditions and factors, especially upon an immature person. You raise your children right, set a good example for them, and you live in a society that actually upholds what you teach in your home, then 9 times out of 10, your children will follow in your footsteps. A knucklehead will pop up here and there, but it would never become a significant problem. On the flip side, if you're raising your children showing them contradictions of reprehensible behavior and hypocritical speech, then more often than not, they will follow in your footsteps. America raises its forcefully adopted children like the latter example. And instead of trying to find our true parents and our true cultural thinking and behavioral systems that produced exemplary societies, you know what we do? Goes right back to the example of the perceived ailment and the perceived cure. They control the manufacture and distribution of food. They control what we eat. We eat the garbage that's available to us in their supermarkets. We get sick. The perceived ailment. We buy their medicine, or when it gets bad enough, we go to their hospitals. The perceived cure. We know now what the actual ailment is and what the actual cure is. But what do? We want to find a way to continue eating the delicious and deadly foods we're eating that make us sick, but we want something, some kind of pill or something that will mitigate the consequences of our abnormal behavior. We don't actually want to stop the abnormal behavior altogether. If someone was to get up and start eating a plate of feces right now, we'd have all types of words for them, because we haven't become accustomed to eating feces yet. But every day we're eating unidentified objects on our plates that have no more nutritional value than doo-doo. Yet, as mentioned before, it's a form of degradation and subtle suicide to which we become acclimated already. That is the general culture of black people today, of people that are in complete and utter denial of the full extent and reality of their situation. How about, instead of lashing out against the concept of black power, you lead by example, showing black people what it's all about, even if it's just the power to be able to control or guide your own communicative efforts in such a way that empowers other black people by providing them with clarity of vision, moral support, and encouragement, fresh ideas that have potential, old ideas that have worked, and specifically old ideas that have worked for us, research materials and so on. And whenever it's time for a hard dose of truth, make sure it's the whole truth. Black people do not live in a vacuum in this world. We live in interconnected societies, and the fact of the matter is that our societies are under the military domination of foreigners. When you speak about the crabs in the barrel, don't forget to mention that a barrel is not the indigenous domain of crabs. How else are they supposed to behave when they're out of their element? I think it was a Professor Watson back in 1930, a professor of psychology, who stated, "Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take any one at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select: doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant chief, and yes, even beggar man and thief, regardless of his talents, penchants, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors." This is the business that the people that we're dealing with are involved in, and we're the subjects. So when you speak of the behaviors that we're displaying within this little science project, don't forget to mention the scientists. Tap and respect.